So I will give a talk about psychedelic value changes. Okay, for some reason this is empty, but well, there should be text, but I have no major conflicts of interest. Yeah, that was weird. Let's hope that doesn't occur again. As a general motivation, I want to give a psychologically realistic account of psychedelic value changes. I have previously written about the value changes during the experiences, but now I'm expanding that account to also include long-term strivings after the experiences. And there is two philosophical concepts from recent discussion which are central for my account, and they are epiphanies and aspiration. Epiphany, the quote, is an overwhelming existentially significant manifestation of value in experience. And aspiration could be defined as the distinctive form of agency directed at acquisition of values. I will later come to more full definitions of these concepts. And yeah, these are two intertwining processes. Yeah, and in general, this account, this is maybe not anything like radical new, but I hope it is a good way to conceptualize something that we know implicitly. For some reason, I cannot, or this pointer doesn't work. Okay, yeah, let's begin with some examples. All these people here, what is shared between these cases is that psychedelic use has impacted the lives of these people. In some cases more centrally and in some cases less. And centrally entangled with more extended processes of value change. And also these cases exemplify various directions the value changes can take. Here on left we have Ram Dass, famous spiritual teacher who began as Harvard psychologist, and then went to a spiritual career as a result of psychedelics. In the middle we have two environmental activists, John Seed and Gail Bradbrook. And both of them have talked how psychedelic experiences have been helpful in their careers and motivated them to do what they are doing. On the right, we have Jacob Chansley, so-called QAnon shaman, who was part of storming of the US Congress building in Capitol Hill riot and was subsequently jailed. And I think this is also an important example that the phenomena that I'm talking about, they are not always only love and light, but there can be also like morally problematic cases of aspiration and value change. And in the bottom, some examples from arts. Grateful Death is in that other picture, and Alex Gray in the other. And in both of these cases, I would say that psychedelic experiences have figured centrally in artistic aspirations these people have had. And in the therapeutic studies, similar phenomena are reported. Here is a quote from Belzer et al. From a psilocybin therapy study related to and here participants described a shift in their life priorities and reported that they came to remember during their psilocybin sessions what was most important about life. And significantly for my account, afterwards they were compelled to reorient their lives after these experiences. Yeah. A couple of words about values. A huge philosophical topic. I would like to contrast two ways of understanding values. First one is values as personal values or valuing, which is the typical approach in psychology. And values can be conceived here as cognitive structures which guide our choices and behavior and set our most abstract goals. And we could say that values in this sense, they are at the core of one's ethical identity. And here, motivation, affect, cognition are all related to values. They affect how we see the world, but also how we are motivated to act and feel. Contrasting way to understand values is values in the world. And I think this approach is in philosophy more common. And we could claim that values are central for our experience, and they are in some sense part of our experience. We could say that they are aspects of objects and states of affairs that we encounter in the world. And there is a body of literature in philosophy related to this. And further, values in this sense, you can see there the pictures of violin and flower and a cross, that they provide reasons for actions. That how we act in the world is centrally related to the values that we recognize in the world. And when we recognize some values, we kind of internalize them, and then they guide our orientation in the world. Also, important topic, which I cannot talk much about here, is that there is many meta-ethical ways to understand values. So what values are, what they are like ontologically, and how can we know values. Some approaches in philosophy are value realistic, that values simply are part of the world. Then we could have approaches which are more constructivistic or cultural or constructivist, where the perception of the world comes largely from culture and is maybe not so universal. But anyways, I think this account can be grounded in many different meta-ethical understandings. Yes, let's go on. Bit more about aspiration. Here is a quote from Callard. Aspiration is the diachronic process by which an agent effects change on her ethical point of view. And important is that in Callard's account, aspiration requires work and effort. As a background, Callard kind of argues against some ways of conceiving transformative value change, which stress decisions and singular experiences. And she argues for an account of value change that relies on this long-term process of learning. So aspiration is kind of long-term process. For example, if I want to understand classical music, it involves that I, for an extended period of time, try to learn to play and listen to classical music and like slowly learn to recognize the value. And Callard thinks that these processes are rational and they are guided by the values that we don't yet grasp. So they are kind of future-oriented processes, and they kind of derive their justification from the values that we are going to know, but we don't yet know. So they are not based on our totally. She makes an important distinction between aspiration and ambition. We can have many projects in life. For example, if I want to get rich, which does not entail change in my identity of values. But on the other hand, there are many processes if I want to appreciate music, or, for example, spiritual pursuits could be another example, which definitely involve fundamental change in myself that I have really to learn and change as the part of the process. Yeah. As a problem with Callard's account is that she really doesn't give much of an account how these processes begin. She talks about initial contact with value and how culture and education can foster one to aspire, and mentions sudden encounters with values. And I think especially these sudden encounters with values should be very relevant for our cases of aspiration. So the question is kind of how one gets the motivation to aspire. If I, for example, want to learn to understand classical music, how I get motivated to that pursuit. And I think this concept can provide part of an answer. This is from Chappell. She wrote a book about this topic where she defines epiphanies as overwhelmingly significant manifestations of value in experience, often sudden and surprising, which feeds the psyche and feels like it comes from outside. And these experiences, according to Chappell, teach something new, and they even take us out from ourselves and provide reasons that there is some kind of natural and correct response to these kind of experiences. We could conceive, and also Chappell herself says that we could conceive these as evaluative aspects of peak experiences or self-transcendent experiences. There are many kinds of epiphanies. This is kind of a loose concept that we can have really strong and central epiphanies, but also kind of micro epiphanies or not so central cases. And they can involve both insights, aha moments, and also wow moments or kind of existential aspects. And what I would like to suggest that these epiphanies are moments of enhanced grasp of values and kind of sudden value learning. Yes, and here is also I included book cover from Abraham Maslow, who also suggests something quite similar. And I think together these two concepts provide a really nice account of transformative value change. And I think especially in combination, these processes can lead to a radical transcendence of one's sensibilities and change of values. And here these pictures just illustrate on the right, if we take Callard's account that we focus only on the aspiration, I think it gives more that kind of linear process. But if we include the epiphanies, I think the picture comes much more non-linear, that there can be like sudden moments where we really grasp some values, and maybe that understanding then kind of fades to a lower level, but then we still can aspire towards these values. So there is kind of heuristic relation between aspiration and epiphanies, that they feed into each other. Yeah, here is a picture that I made. I would say that both of these processes are culturally embedded, which is important, that they occur in part of social practices and culture. And we could conceive epiphanies as points which can start or reinforce aspiration. And on the other hand, consolidates epiphanies and also prepares one for epiphanies. That the epiphanies, they don't happen in vacuum, but what values I already have and what kind of aspirations I already have, they are like important ground for which kind of epiphanies I'm going to have. Yes. And as a clarification, I'm not claiming that all value changes necessarily involve epiphanies, but definitely some of them do, especially the psychedelic ones. Yes. And yeah, maybe also one more point about aspiration, that why it is important also to kind of for more gradual work to get know some value, but also to deal with various value conflicts and also other problems we might have between us and values. Okay, psychedelic value changes. This is also a huge topic. I have published one article which kind of summarizes the empirical research and offers a philosophical theory of these changes. Values are central for both for ethics, but also for psychotherapy, as we saw in previous lectures. And my suggestion is that psychedelic value changes, they involve both epiphanies and aspirations. And also they are a nice way to study how epiphanies affect aspiration. This is also, I could talk for an hour about this, but what makes psychedelics epiphanic is a big topic. I would say there is also cognitive factors, but also affective factors that psychedelics can lead to reframing of the experiences and to redirection of our attention to certain evaluative aspects of the world. But also they align our affect and our motivation, that those components of our psyche are very strongly involved in the experiences. And I would claim that they can lead to kind of experientialization of knowledge, and we could say realization of values, that values are made somehow more real in our experience. And thus psychedelics might foster and inspire aspiration, partly through these epiphanic contacts with value, but also through other mechanisms, such as fostering susceptibility to change and helping to resolve barriers from aspiration through therapy. On the other hand, I suggest that aspiration is central for our understanding of the concept of integration. And if we think, what does it mean to integrate epiphanies? I would suggest that aspiring towards values is one very central way for that. Yes, and the final slide. Yeah, concept of aspiration is also central for understanding psychedelic use. Not all contexts of psychedelic use are aspirational, for example, if I take them for fun, but aspiration conceptually unifies many domains of psychedelic use, such as therapy, spirituality, art, and eudaimonia, or kind of seeking of good life. And on the other hand, the cultural context one is embedded in is central for both the epiphanies and aspiration. Here is some pictures of like different ceremonies and therapy room setting. And I would say that we have to take this kind of social context into account when understanding the processes of value change as well. Yeah. Okay, there would be much more to say, but maybe I stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions or comments? There is one up there.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. My question is, what kind of cultural factors in the contextual sense would be helpful to kind of facilitate or support this dance between aspiration and revelations?
Yes, I think that's an excellent question, and also something that we really, as a society, should focus on. I think I would say some kind of long-term community probably is one part of the picture, and also probably context with kind of provides good values to begin with. I think, for example, many like spiritual settings can provide like very good values to as part of arts as well as therapy.
Yeah, thank you, Juuso. The slide where you talked about epiphanies, that some part of me didn't really like. I want to like argue against a little bit that there was that like it always comes outside, and from my experience, sometimes it feels that like pieces inside of me kind of like clicks in, like it's like a clue, or it's like something may come outside, but more inside of me something clicks, and then you're like, oh yeah, of course, yeah. So it's like maybe maybe something comes outside, but something in me like makes the change. So do you agree or?
Yeah, I would agree with that, or I think we don't have to think that they always have to have that kind of sense of coming from outside. I think what Chappell is claiming that they often feel like that, but definitely there is the kind of internal process that is very central for them. And I think in psychedelics, for example, certain kind of symbolic thinking and associative thinking that you kind of, what you think it kind of can have this kind of very general quality, for example, that you think about your closed one and then you understand the general value of relationships in life, and that kind of stuff is very central.
Just the notion that you're making money and you're learning to do music, you're contrasting them too. But as a previous economics student, I have to admit that we do altruistic terms. So you maybe want to learn to make money to actually help other people. So that's not, it's just not an obvious dichotomy. Just pointing out.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's important. We could maybe say that some of the ambitions are towards self-transcendent goals, that we can use ambition for the good. But but it's still, I think, important, like whether the projects one has in life, whether they kind of entail that I change as a person or not.
Thank you for the presentation. I would go back to the QAnon shaman example that we also had in the beginning, as I was just wondering, what do you see as kind of like some of the factors or reasons as how this process can lead into, let's say, to the darker aspects or kind of like darker epiphanies, and like what kind of like motivation and direction that can give to an individual so that we can have these greater epiphanies and motivation to pursue certain ideals and whatnot, but that then, like from an outside perspective, maybe we can see that that all of the consequences might not be that positive, at least like judged by a greater community. Just to have, like, if you have any ideas related to this.
Yes, I would refer people to read that Pace and Devenot 2021 article, which is about cases of right-wing psychedelia, and they explore the use of psychedelics by cults and neo-Nazis and these kind of cases. And I think the general pattern is that the cultural context is very central, that these people, for example, if you already have far-right beliefs, then it's highly likely that the epiphanies you are reinforce those beliefs. Although there are like many possible trajectories that sometimes the epiphanies can go against your previous values, but I think more commonly already has.
Yes, thanks. I was wondering, do we have any data on how often people have epiphanies sort of on a daily basis, and how often they pursue or sort of grasp them or follow up on epiphanies? Or basically.
Yeah, that is a very interesting question. I don't have any specific data. I know that I don't know that anybody would have studied specifically epiphanies, but like peak experiences and spontaneous spiritual experiences, those have been studied, and I think they are relatively common. But I don't know, like, is there any studies on how often kind of people follow them? I would assume that it's quite common if one has spontaneous epiphany that they affect people's life, but. Yeah.
I was wondering how people would kind of separate just like automatic thoughts that just come and go to some like more serious ones. Short thoughts or like revealing ideas or something like that. Because some of those will be just automatic thoughts that come up and then they just go away.
Yeah. I think it's maybe helpful to understand it kind of that experiences we have, they kind of vary in their intensity, and some are like not at all intensive, some are like super intensive epiphanies, and then we have very many like in between cases. Yeah, something like that.
Maybe epiphanies feel viscerally, like it's really feeling on the body part.
Probably yes.
We have time for just one more question. I'm sorry. We have to skip that one.
Yeah, following up on this discussion, so there's a relationship between epiphanies and values. Would you say the relationship between those is similar to the relationship between insights and our conceptions of the world? And also, is this perhaps related to what Markus was asking about, that that maybe you were referring more to insights than epiphanies in this context or dichotomy?
Yeah, I think the analogy holds, and actually insights also could be conceived as subtype of epiphanies. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much. Good discussion,
Thank
good
you.
presentation.